Let's talk about labeling. It came to my attention not too long ago that I have a random superpower. The power to label things quickly, efficiently, and easily. And it comes from over 20 years of experience. And it's so funny because as I'm saying this to you, I'm like, I feel so ridiculous because to me, this is like the equivalent to like knowing how to breathe. But I realize that a lot of times people come to me and they don't necessarily know these little tips and tricks that make labeling go a lot better. Now, what I will say is I am not a fancy labeler. You all know I am not a fancy organizer. It's not what I want to be. It's not what excites me. You will never find me with one of those beautiful, interesting, like Cricut label makers where there's cursive and it's beautiful. My brain is like working on like an emotional, spiritual level, and that stuff is amazing. And if someone wanted to do it for me, I would be like, but generally speaking, a lot of times I know that we are just trying to get our head above water and taking the time that it will take to make beautiful labels sometimes can deter people, distract them from what's really going on, and in my case, stop me from doing this kind of like deeper work that I'm doing. Now, a quick sidebar, if you are someone who wants to use beautiful, interesting labels, that is fantastic. And yes, when it comes to things that you can very easily see visually, it makes perfect sense to want beautiful labels. So I think about a lot of like Pinterest pages where they're talking about decanting things in the pantry and having these beautiful labels that say like flowers, sugar. Yes, that's great because it's an aesthetic. You're basically serving an aesthetic. But 90% of the boxes in your home do not need fancy, beautiful labels. They need real basic, simple, straight to the point labels that are going to serve the function and not the beauty. So yes, take the time to make the beautiful labels when and if that feels right to you, but know that 90% are going to be as basic as they come. So I keep it really, really simple. So first off, I always have a toolbox. It's super important to me that when I go to organize either your stuff or my stuff, that I have everything that I need right where I need it. So I create a little box to store my label maker, scissors, and maybe a cartridge or two of extra labels. So that again, I don't have to go and hunt for it. I can carry this around with me wherever my projects are. When I'm making labels, I will actually toss the garbage in here, so that I'm not having to like reinvent the wheel. Everything is like all in one, and at the end of the day, I remove the label maker and the scissors and I dump the scraps out. So this makes it all contained and easy to use. Let's talk devices for a second. I love the Brother Label Maker. This little label maker has been in my possession and actively working for over 10 years. This is my baby, it's my workhorse, and I know one day it's gonna die and I'm gonna be so sad because I anthropomorphize everything, but this very simple, basic Brother Label Maker is what I use. And I use just the basic 1/2-inch label tape. My standard preference is to use the white label tape with black writing. Now, I always have a few other styles in my kit that are important to me. I like to have black labels with white writing, and that works great when you're labeling electronics, computers, things like that, so that the label kind of fades to the back and you can see what it says. I also always have clear with black writing on it, and those are the three that I run with the most. Yes, you can get pink, you can get yellow, you can do all these fun things. I like to keep it simple. I'm looking at how can the label make my life easier and not be too distracting, because for a lot of people, the distraction of too much contrast can be stressful. We're also looking at the fact that for a lot of people, they need the labels to be as simple and kind of like in the back as possible. One of the downsides of this lovely little label maker is that it's a business. They make money on the cartridges. So these little cartridges can be a bit expensive. If you buy them somewhere like an office supply store, you're probably going to pay $30 a cartridge, which is mind-boggling to me. Like, please don't do that. Run at all costs. The cheapest place that you can buy them is Costco. They will almost always have a 4-pack for around $40, so like $10 a cartridge, and that's the cheapest place to get them. If you don't have a Costco membership, you can always get them on Amazon. They're around the same price, a little bit more. One cautionary tale though, do not buy the aftermarket labels. They do not come off, like the backing doesn't come off as easily, and they don't stick as long, and they're not as removable. One of the things that I love about this is that the labels, like this like sticky label, it's easy to peel off, and when I stick it onto a plastic box, if I need to change that label in 6 months, if I'm going to move and upgrade the box, if I'm going to change something, I can take that same label and move it from one box to another a year later, 2 years later. They stick so well, but you can also move them. So to me, that's worth it because then you're not having to make new labels every single time. You just pull them off and re-stick them again, and they work great. They don't leave a weird residue on the boxes. It's just a high quality label that works really, really well. Whereas the aftermarkets don't work as well. I've had clients who've used them and it just becomes this struggle. One of the things that we are trying to eliminate is a barrier to entry. So for example, if you are trying to remove the backing of the label to put it on the box, and the backing does not come off easily and you have to go and get a pair of tweezers, or you're like spending 5 minutes scratching at the edge, you have now taken what could have been a 10-second action and moved it into a 5-minute segment. So we don't want that. I want as few barriers to entry as possible because organizing is boring. We all want to stop doing it. We want to stop organizing and go do something else that's more fun. And if you come across a barrier like I can't get the back sticky off, you're going to stop organizing or you're going to stop labeling, and it's not going to serve you. So as excessive as it seems, it's totally worth getting the things that work well for you, getting the right things, because it is going to make you go faster. It's going to make things easier for you. Also, watch the type of label maker. Like if you have a Dymo, for example, print out one and see, how does it feel to use this? Like, you want to think about a few things. You want to think about the label. You also want to think about the keypad. I've used the style before where it's more rectangular and the keyboard is not set up like a computer keyboard, and that makes me move so much slower. So take the time to make sure that you have a device that works really well for you, that the label cartridges work well for you and feel functional. So now we've got the label maker, we've got the labels, you want a pair of scissors, and that's all you need. And one of the things that I tell people a lot with labeling, and it does not make some people happy, is you want to label all 4 sides of the boxes in your home. And the reason for that is you just don't know how it's going to get put away. So in a perfect world, everyone is managing our boxes with the care and love that we do. Everyone is using the objects of our home exactly as we would, but we know that that's not the case. So when your 5-year-old goes to put something away, they're not thinking, is the label facing out? They're just shoving it on the shelf. Or if you're moving, same thing. This exact same label philosophy of labeling all 4 sides also goes with your moving boxes, cardboard boxes. It doesn't have to just be with the label maker. Anytime you label something, I always recommend labeling all 4 sides. You might have one side labeled and it gets pushed to the side, and you look at the box, you don't see a label, and you're like, I don't even know what this is, and you suddenly start organizing it again. We want to help your future self, and we help our future selves by letting them know all the information that we know today when we are deep in the project. So yes, it can be frustrating. Yes, it sometimes feels wasteful. It's one of the most important things that you can do, because again, it's not about, well, I don't want to organize, I don't want to label this box. It's about, how can I make sure that my future self has the information that they need in order to use the items that are in that box, to function in my house, and to find what they need when they need to find it. Now we're going to just make a label. So like I said, the type of cartridges you use are important, but also because they're expensive, we don't want to just go wasting them. And a lot of times what happens is you are using about 1 inch of label tape every single time you print a label. And so if you print out one word, you've got 1 inch that you've lost. So what we want to do is we want to maximize how we type out and print the labels so that we can maximize that label tape. So what I like to do is, if I am labeling one box, just a singular box, because I do all 4 sides, I will write that single word 4 times. I'll give you an example. I'm going to type out the single word 4 times, and then I'm going to print out that label 1 time, which means that instead of me writing the word once and then printing it 4 times, I'm writing the word 4 times and printing it once. So instead of losing 4 inches of label tape, I'm only using 1, which is reasonable. So we're going to print that out, and then you only need to do a single space between the words. There's plenty of space for you to cut if you do that. So I did the word memory. And so see, there's plenty of space for you to go and cut between those. So then I'm going to cut the edges. I always like to cut the edges off because it just looks so much cleaner if it's tighter. So I'll cut those edges off, and then I will cut those individual. And a lot of times I'll just use like the lid of the box to hold the cut labels, because a lot of times we're doing multiple boxes at a time. So I will literally just set it on here. And then what's nice is, again, this label maker is my favorite because all you have to do is fold it in half and that label just pops right off. Like that backing of the label pops right off, and then you can just stick it on the box. Now, when I'm sticking it on the box, there's always a question of where do I put it? So I'm going to use this as an example. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to get it too close to the lip here to where I can't see it if I'm overhead or kind of, far away. I'm going to put it in the center, centered, so that if I'm high up, I can see it. I'm far away, I can see it. And that's what I'm going to do on all four sides. Now, sometimes there are boxes that have a little lip here. And in that case, I actually put it lined up with the lip because that just makes it nice and straight and even. And that matters. Like, it matters that when we look at our boxes, they look nice to us, we feel put together. Because if they're all crooked and funky, your brain is probably always going to want to change that. And so we want to eliminate any of that, again, that distraction, that barrier to entry. So I just line it up right here. Now, what if you're going to be doing a bigger project and you have like 30 boxes to label? And that is something that I come across a lot in my work. So what I will do in that case is I will sit down and grab my label maker and I will write the name of each box one time. So I will write it until it runs out of space. I will write, memorabilia, shoes, sheets, towels, whatever. I will write those until I run out of space in my label maker, and then I will print that 4 times. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to minimize my effort. And if I have to write each of those categories 4 times, that takes a lot of time. If I write it 1 time, and then I just have to hit that little print button 4 times, fantastic. I've just saved myself a lot of time and energy. So I will print those out 4 times, cut them out, put them, set them right on top of here, like again, right on top of the box lid, carry them to where I'm going, and I generally label in stacks. So I'll stack 3, 4, 5 of them together, label, 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 turn them, label, 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 turn them, and that saves a lot of time. And these things seem so silly when we talk about them, but it really saves a lot of time, a lot of stress, saves you labels, saves you money. And the nice thing about when we get these boxes labeled is that ideally you're creating systems that are going to serve you for years to come. This is not something you're going to have to do every day or every week. It's a one and done in this way. You're basically creating systems, and yes, those systems might evolve and grow, but generally speaking, the labeled systems that we create mostly maintain for years to come. All right, so you have printed out your labels, you have cut them, you have labeled your boxes. Then at the end of the day, you have a box that's full of trash. I don't have that much trash because I didn't do that much. You just take the label maker and the scissors out, you dump the trash out, and then you put your label maker and your scissors back in the case again, and voila, you are ready for your next organizing project. It's good to go. And I will always recommend having a toolbox of your organizing supplies. I tend to keep my label maker separate because my experience is that like this needs to exist as its own little individual island of activity. But I will have some sort of either box or bag where I have Post-its, Sharpies, scissors, box cutters, anything that I can think of that I think is going to be helpful to me or that I discover through time I need when I'm organizing is going to go in that box, even if that means buying duplicates so that you don't have to use the stapler from your office. You have a stapler for your organizing kit. It will just make it so much easier for you to stay focused and sharp when you're organizing, because these little things don't seem like they matter, but they matter a lot when it comes to being functional, when it comes to getting organized quickly and not feeling distracted during the process. So I hope that this little label introduction helped you. If you want to share any of your own best practices for labeling the containers and bins in your life, share below in the comments. I would love to hear from you and learn more about how you manage the organizational tasks and activities in your life. Thanks so much for joining me. It's always so great to have you here. If you want more tips and organizing tricks, subscribe below and join me on this beautiful organizing journey.